I've been on site security for 11 years now, mostly overnight shifts at the downtown corporate tower. My station is the main lobby console, a crescent of monitors and blinking lights that gives me eyes on every public inch of the building, from the street-level turnstiles to the sky bridge connecting us to the parking structure. It's a quiet job, usually. The air conditioning hums, a low, steady thrum against the silence of the lobby, punctuated only by the distant rumble of the freight trains crossing the river. I know this building, every creak, every shift in the air pressure, every pixel on these screens. My training covers everything from fire suppression to active threat response, but mostly it's about observation, logging, and maintaining the integrity of the access control system. The turnstiles are access controlled, proximity readers that log every entry and exit. Each badge swipe records the time, date, specific lane, and the credential ID. Our system is designed for singular access. One credential, one entry, one physical person. Any duplicate read within a short window flags an alert, usually indicating a tailgater, a lost badge being reused, or an attempt at unauthorized entry. Overnight, contractor activity is rare, limited to critical infrastructure checks or server maintenance. These are scheduled events, pre-approved, and the individuals are known. This particular night, the shift started like any other. The clock on my console read 0200. I was halfway through my third cup of coffee, the kind that tastes like burnt metal and regret, but keeps the eyes open. The lobby was empty, polished marble reflecting the muted glow of the emergency lights. The only movement was the slow crawl of the cleaning crew's autonomous scrubber, leaving wet trails across the floor. At 02:14:03, the system chimed a low, unobtrusive alert. Lane 3, the furthest turnstile to the east, registered an entry. Contractor ID 771-B, a maintenance credential, standard procedure. I glanced at the live feed for Lane 3. A figure in a dark, heavy work coat, hood up, had just cleared the turnstile and was already moving towards the east elevators. Nothing unusual. I made a mental note to check the contractor log later, confirm the scheduled work. Then, at 2:14:07, another chime, sharper this time, indicating a duplicate. Lane 1, the furthest turnstile to the west, registered an entry. Contractor ID 771-B. My first thought was a system error, or maybe the badge had been held too long, activating twice on the same reader, though the system usually prevents that. But the logs showed two distinct turnstile activations, 4 seconds apart, in two different lanes, separated by a good 30 feet of lobby floor. That wasn't a double tap. That was two separate events. I immediately pulled up the recorded footage for both lanes, rewinding to 2:14. Lane 3 first. A man, as I'd seen, in a bulky, dark work coat, the hood pulled tight around his face, swiped his badge, the turnstile clicked, and he walked through. His gait was a little stiff, a little heavy. The coat was unremarkable, but distinctive enough in its bulk. He moved off towards the east elevator bank. Then, Lane 1. Another man, same bulky, dark work coat, same hood pulled tight, swiped his badge, turnstile clicked, and he walked through. His gait was also stiff, heavy. The coat hung on him in the exact same way. My breath caught. They weren't just similar. The build, the way the coat draped, the subtle lean of the shoulders, it was identical. I scrubbed the footage, frame by frame. The badge number was the same. The time was the same, within seconds. The physical appearance, as much as could be seen under the hood, was the same. Standard procedure for a duplicate badge read is to flag the individual, confirm identity, and if necessary, intercept to verify credentials. But how do you intercept two identical individuals moving in opposite directions from the same origin point? I switched to the main lobby overview camera, a wide-angle lens covering the entire floor. At 2:14:15, the figure from lane 3 was indeed crossing the east side of the lobby, heading towards the elevators, his form a dark, moving silhouette against the polished floor. At 2:14:18, the figure from lane 1 was crossing the west side of the lobby, also heading towards the elevators. They were moving away from the turnstiles, not towards them, and they were on opposite sides of the massive lobby, converging towards the central elevator core. I tried to raise them on the intercom system. Contractor 771B, please respond to lobby security. No answer. I tried the direct line for the contractor's on-site supervisor. It rang out, then went to voicemail. I remembered a night years ago, working a different site, when a cat had snuck in and set off motion detectors for an hour. That was a simpler kind of mystery. This was different. This was a violation of fundamental physics, not just a security breach. I escalated my focus to the elevator banks. The figures entered separate cars, one on the east, one on the west, within seconds of each other. The system showed both cards registered for the 37th floor, where the main server rooms were located. I pulled up the camera feeds for the 37th floor lobby. The figures emerged from their respective elevators, still identical, still moving with that same stiff gait. They walked down separate corridors, disappearing from view. My hands felt cold on the console. This wasn't a glitch. This was an event. Two distinct physical manifestations, same credential, same time, same destination. My mind raced through possibilities. An elaborate prank, identical twins with a shared badge, some kind of advanced projection technology. None of it made sense. The system logs were absolute, two distinct entries. I continued to track them, pushing past the initial shock. The 37th floor feeds showed them entering separate server rooms. My internal protocols screamed for me to dispatch a response team. But who would I send? And to which room? What would they find? Then, the Sky Bridge. It's a long enclosed walkway connecting our tower to the adjacent parking structure, offering a panoramic view of the city lights. There are several cameras along its length. I watched the figures emerge from the 37th floor server rooms, re-enter the elevators, and descend. They didn't return to the lobby. Instead, the system showed their badge activating on the 5th floor, the Skybridge access level. Camera 12, covering the Skybridge entrance from our tower, showed the figure from the east side entering the bridge at 02:16:35. Camera 14, covering the Skybridge mid-span, showed the figure from the west side entering the bridge at 02:16:38. They were moving in parallel, roughly equidistant from the center of the bridge. At 02:16:42, camera 14 stuttered. Just one frame. The city lights outside, usually a steady stream of red and white from the traffic below, seemed to jump backward, like a tape rewinding a fraction of a second. The figure on the bridge also seemed to ripple for that single frame, like an image briefly losing its resolution before snapping back. It was barely perceptible, a flicker in the periphery of my vision, but I'd seen it. I rewound, played it back at quarter speed. There it was again. The lights outside the Skybridge window, the distant cars, the illuminated signs. They all momentarily reversed their flow. And the figure, for that same fraction of a second, seemed to blur, to stretch, to become less substantial. My supervisor was due in less than 4 hours. I knew I had to log this, every detail, every timestamp. But what exactly was I logging? A system malfunction? A visual hallucination brought on by too much coffee and too little sleep? Or something else entirely? The figures continued their progression across the sky bridge, still distinct, still identical. They reached the other side, entered the parking structure, and their badge, contractor ID 771-B, registered an exit from the property at 02:17 minutes 10 seconds. One exit. Not two. Just one. I rechecked the exit log. Contractor ID 771-B, 02:17 minutes 10. 15 years on the night shift. You learn to read a building by its hum. The corporate campus I worked was a modern labyrinth of glass and steel, usually quiet after midnight. The only sounds the distant thrum of the HVAC and the rhythmic whisper of my floor buffer. My routine was a well-oiled machine. Punch in, check the assignment log, grab the cart, and start the methodical sweep. Every door secured, every bin emptied, every surface wiped down. It was a predictable world, and I liked it that way. My primary tool, beyond the usual cleaning supplies, was my keycard. It granted access, tracked my movements, and, more importantly, confirmed that every suite door, once I passed it, remained locked. The facility's security protocols were stringent. After business hours, all offices and specialized suites were locked down. Any entry beyond that required specific keycard authorization, logged down to the second. Motion sensors, or passive infrared, PIR detectors, were installed in every occupied space, linked to a central security console. They were designed to detect movement, a critical layer of safety. If a PIR tripped, security knew instantly. If I was in a suite, my keycard entry and the central sign-in sheet confirmed my presence. One person, one entry. That was the rule. It was just after 0200, a Tuesday. I was on the 4th floor, working my way through the executive wing. The air was cool, smelling faintly of ozone from the ionizers in the ventilation system. My cart, a standard-issue stainless steel model, glided silently on its rubber wheels. I'd just finished buffing a section of the main corridor, the polished linoleum reflecting the overhead fluorescence like a calm river. I rounded the corner, heading towards the cluster of specialized project suites. And that's when I saw it. A cart. Not mine, but an identical model. One of the general utility carts, used by various departments for supplies or equipment transport. It was rolling slowly, almost drifting, out of Suite 412. The door to 412, a heavy soundproofed unit with a small glass panel, was slightly ajar. As I watched, it swung inward, then silently clicked shut, the magnetic lock engaging with a soft thud. My first thought was annoyance. Someone had been careless, left a card out, didn't secure the suite properly. A minor lapse, but in this building, security was paramount. I pushed my own cart to the side, grabbed the handle of the stray cart and started to wheel it back towards the door. It was then I noticed the cart was empty, not a single item on its shelves, and it was already several feet from the door, as if it had been pushed with purpose. I reached for the door handle to Suite 412. It was solid, locked. I tried my keycard just to be sure. The reader flashed green for a split second, then immediately red, denying access. The door was secured, but the cart was undeniably out in the corridor. I pulled my radio, pressing the transmit button. "Security, this is Cleaner 3. I have an anomaly on 4. A moment of static, then the calm voice of the night supervisor. "Go ahead, Cleaner 3. Suite 412. A facility cart rolled out. Door is locked." "A cart rolled out of a locked suite?" the supervisor asked, a hint of surprise in their tone. "You sure it wasn't already in the corridor?" "Positive. Came right out of the door, then it clicked shut. Door's locked now." "Stand by." While I waited, a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning prickled my skin. I walked over to the nearest security panel, a small touchscreen recessed into the wall. I input the suite number, 412. The screen flickered, displaying the suite's status, climate control, lighting, power draw, and then the PIR readout. Suite 412, 3 moving. I blinked. 3 moving? My sign-in sheet for this sector listed only one active cleaner, me. No one else was authorized to be on this floor, let alone inside a locked suite. My earlier thought, that perhaps the PIR was just showing a delayed reading from someone leaving earlier, evaporated. This was an active count, updating in real time. The supervisor's voice came back over the radio. "Cleaner 3. Our logs show no authorized entry to Suite 412 since 1800. No alarms tripped. PIR is showing active movement, though. Can you confirm?" "I can," I replied, my voice tighter than I liked. "It shows 3 moving on the panel here." "Understood. Stay put. I'm contacting engineering. They'll need to pop the vestibule." I leaned against my own cart, the metal cold against my uniform. The corridor was silent again, except for the distant hum. I looked at the cart from Suite 412. It sat innocuously, reflecting the fluorescence. I remembered a morning years ago, sitting at my kitchen table. The sun just rising, painting the window in soft oranges. My dog, a scruffy terrier mix, nudging my hand for a piece of toast. A small, peaceful memory, starkly contrasting with the unsettling quiet of the present. About 15 minutes later, the engineering technician arrived. A seasoned veteran, they carried a small toolkit and a portable key audit terminal. They nodded a greeting, their expression unreadable. "Suite 412, huh?" they grunted, surveying the locked door and the errant cart. "Security says something rolled out." "That's correct," I said, pointing to the door. "And the PIR is showing 3 distinct movements inside." The technician pulled out their master keycard, swiped it, and the small, heavy door to the vestibule, a small, enclosed entry area before the main suite door, clicked open. As they pushed it inward, a thin layer of condensation instantly bloomed across the inside surface of the vestibule's glass panel, obscuring the view into the main suite beyond. It was like a sudden breath on cold glass, but from inside, a sealed, climate-controlled space. The technician paused, their brow furrowed, then wiped a hand across the glass, clearing a patch. The main suite door was still there, still closed. They pulled out their portable terminal, connecting it to a data port beside the main suite door. Their fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up the key audit logs for Suite 412. This was standard procedure. Verify who accessed the suite last, when, and with what authorization. The screen flickered, displaying lines of data. The technician squinted, then pulled back slightly. "What is it?" I asked. They pointed a calloused finger at the screen. "Look here, Suite 412, last opened." The technician paused, then read the next line aloud. "Decommissioned." I leaned closer. The words were stark, unambiguous. Last opened. Decommissioned. "What does that mean?" I asked. The technician shook their head slowly. "It means the key for this suite was deactivated years ago. It should not be possible for any active keycard in our system to open this door. It certainly shouldn't show any access logs." They ran the query again, a different search parameter. The result was identical. Decommissioned. We stood there, the three of us, the technician, the supervisor's voice crackling occasionally on my radio, and me, in the silent, fluorescent-lit corridor. The cart from Suite 412 sat motionless, a silent witness. The glass panel on the vestibule door, now wiped clear, remained dry. The PIR display on the wall panel still showed 3 moving. The key audit, designed to provide clarity, had instead delivered an impossible answer. A door that couldn't be opened, yet something had exited it. Multiple entities moving inside, yet no one logged. The systems, usually so reliable, had failed to provide any rational explanation. The technician eventually tagged the cart as found property and wheeled it to the lost and found. The suite door remained locked. The incident was logged, the details noted, but no further action was taken. There was nothing more to do. The building hummed on, indifferent, holding its secrets tight behind its locked, decommissioned doors. I've been an elevator maintenance engineer for 22 years. Most of that time spent in commercial and industrial settings across the greater Midwest. I'm certified for hydraulic, traction, and MRL systems, and I've seen just about every kind of breakdown you can imagine. Snapped cables, overloaded motors, micro switches fused by lightning strikes, even a car that dropped 3 floors because a counterweight guide shoe fractured. My toolkit is a second skin. Multimeter, service key, schematics for 1,000 different models, and a laptop loaded with diagnostic software. My job is about logic, about systems. Every problem has a cause, and every cause has a solution, usually found in a wiring diagram or a pressure gauge. What happened last Tuesday, at the old Atlas Freight Terminal, didn't fit any diagram I'd ever seen. The call came in at 3:17. A freight elevator, Unit 7, stalled between floors. Standard procedure. The building, a hulking concrete structure from the late 60s, was mostly warehousing now, with a few small logistics offices. It had 4 freight cars, all heavy-duty traction systems, built to haul pallets of raw materials and finished goods. I'd serviced them for years. They were robust, but old, prone to worn relays or a sticky door sensor. I arrived at 3:55. The night security officer met me, a young man named Miller, new to the shift. He reported no sounds, no alarms, just a sudden stop. I logged my arrival, noting the ambient temperature at 48 degrees Fahrenheit and a light drizzle outside. The building's main power was stable. I went straight to the machine room on the roof, a cavernous space smelling faintly of ozone and warm oil. The control panel for Unit 7 showed a fault code. F37. Car stopped between landings. Nothing unusual. I pulled up the schematics on my laptop, cross-referencing the fault. It indicated a potential door zone issue or a safety circuit interruption. My first step was a remote reset. I cycled the main power to Unit 7, waiting for the familiar hum of the motor to restart and the car to re-level. Nothing. The fault persisted. This meant the car wasn't just confused, it was physically stuck or sensing an ongoing issue. Next, I tried to jog the car, moving it manually a few inches at a time to clear any obstruction or re-engage a sensor. I tried to move it up, then down. The motor strained for a second, then disengaged, the F37 code flashing stubbornly. The car was truly immobile. I descended to the main floor. The building was quiet, the only sound the distant drone of the HVAC system and the occasional drip of condensation from an overhead pipe. I used my service key to open the hoistway door at the ground level. Peering into the dark shaft, I saw the top of Unit 7's car about 10 feet below. Its internal lights were on, casting a faint glow upwards. I could see the car's indicator panel through the ventilation grill. It was reporting B2. That was odd. The call was for a stalled car, but the indicator showed it at a floor. I radioed Miller. Unit 7 showing B2. Can you confirm the door is closed at B2? Stand by, he replied. A minute later, his voice crackled back. Negative. B2 door is closed, but the car isn't here. It's empty. This was a contradiction. The car's indicator was showing B2, but the car wasn't there. I made my way to the B2 landing. The air grew cooler, carrying the distinct, earthy smell of damp concrete and something else, a faint metallic tang I couldn't place. The B2 landing was a typical sublevel. Exposed concrete walls, bare bulbs, and a single, unlit freight door for Unit 7. The call button next to it was dark. I pressed it. No response. I returned to the ground floor and, after a quick check of the schematics, located the access panel for the shaft inspection mode. I engaged the safety lockout, ensuring no one could inadvertently call the car. I then carefully lowered myself into the hoistway using my harness and safety line, a procedure I'd done hundreds of times. The air in the shaft was still, heavy with dust and the faint scent of old grease. I had my headlamp on, illuminating the concrete walls. As I descended, I kept an eye on the car, which remained stationary. When I was level with the top of the car, I noticed something. The car's indicator was lit, but it wasn't a full segment. It was a partial illumination, a segment that looked like it was trying to display B2, but only the top half of the B and the 2 were clearly visible, with a faint, flickering line where the bottom half should be. It looked like B2.5, if such a thing existed. I remember thinking how my own kid, when he was small, used to draw numbers that didn't quite fit the lines, and I'd teach him about precision. This felt like a deliberate lack of precision. I lowered myself further until I was standing on the car's roof. I checked the door mechanism, the interlocks, the safety edges. Everything appeared mechanically sound. No visible obstructions in the shaft. I opened the control panel on the car's roof, connecting my laptop to the diagnostic port. The internal logs confirmed the F37 fault. But then a new message flashed. Weight change detected. I stared at the screen. Weight change. But the car was empty. Miller had confirmed it. I'd seen it myself from the top of the shaft. I peered through the emergency hatch into the cab. Empty. Absolutely no one inside. No pallets, no equipment, just the bare steel floor. I ran a full system diagnostic. The weight sensors, located under the car's platform, were reporting a fluctuating load, registering between 150 and 200 pounds. This was impossible. The car was empty. I checked the sensor wiring for corrosion or damage. Nothing. The connections were clean, the wires intact. I tried to override the door interlocks manually, hoping to get the car to re-level. The system refused, citing the F-37 fault and the weight change as primary blocks. I decided to try and move the car from the machine room again, hoping the direct connection and my presence might clear the phantom weight. I climbed back out of the shaft, securing the access panel. Back on the roof, I contacted Miller again. I'm going to attempt a manual reset from the panel. Stand clear of Unit 7 on all floors. Copy that, he responded. I went back to the control panel. I initiated the manual descent procedure, overriding the F-37 fault for a controlled, slow movement. The motor hummed, a low, grinding sound. The car began to descend. On the panel, the floor indicator clicked from B2.5, which I now realized was what the half-lit segment was trying to convey, to B3. Then, it stopped. Another chime. No fault code this time, just a clean stop. The indicator now showed a solid B3. I waited. Nothing. The car was supposed to continue to the lowest floor, B4, for a full reset. I tried to move it again. No response. It was acting as if it had reached its destination. I went down to B3. The door was closed. I pressed the call button. The door slid open with a heavy scrape of steel on concrete. The cab was empty. The lights were on. The internal indicator showed B3. I stepped inside. The air was cool, stale. I checked the internal diagnostic panel. Weight change detected. It still read. And the car's logs showed it had stopped at B3, as if it had been called there. I stood there, alone in the empty freight car, the door still open to the concrete landing. My protocol for a stalled car, for a weight sensor fault, was to verify the load. I had done that. The car was empty. Yet the system insisted on a weight. And it had stopped at a non-existent half-floor, then moved to B3, reporting a weight change the entire time. The system was reporting a physical impossibility, and it was acting on it. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the concrete. I closed the door, the scraping sound echoing in the silent building. I had to report the car out of service, with an unresolved anomaly. It was a first for me. I've been a tenant manager for commercial properties in the downtown district for 12 years. Most of my experience is with Class A office spaces, the kind with polished lobbies and glass curtain walls. My job covers everything from adjusting HVAC schedules to overseeing major build-outs, but at its core, it's about maintaining the physical integrity and operational readiness of our buildings. I carry a master key set, a multi-tool, and a ruggedized tablet for work orders and system access, which includes our building management system and the integrated PBX interface. It was a Tuesday morning, 0:15. The sky was overcast and the temperature gauge on my tablet read 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Our third-floor tenant, Apex Solutions, had completed their move-out last Friday. Standard procedure dictates a thorough walkthrough to confirm all their equipment is gone, check for any damage, and verify that all utilities are either off or set to a minimum holding state. Power to individual workstations is always cut, and all associated phone extensions are deactivated. The space was now a cavernous, empty shell, mostly open-plan cubicle farms with a few glass-walled private offices. A critical part of every tenant move-out is the final audit of the PBX system. All extensions belonging to the vacating tenant are marked dark. This means no inbound or outbound calls, no voicemail, and no active loops. It's a non-negotiable step to prevent lingering charges or, worse, unauthorized network access. Our system is designed to immediately flag any active line within a designated dark block. I rely on this protocol. It's foundational. As I walked through the main open-plan area, the silence was profound. The only sound was the distant, almost imperceptible hum of the building's central HVAC system. Then, a faint, insistent ring cut through it. It wasn't the sharp digital chirp of a modern cell phone, but the deeper, more resonant tone of an older desk phone. The sound emanated from what used to be a cluster of cubicles near the south windows. A single, black desk phone, stripped of its monitors and peripherals, sat on a bare laminate surface. Its small red message light pulsed rhythmically. I approached the desk slowly. The phone was definitely ringing, though no one else was in the entire space. I picked up the handset. There was no dial tone, just a dead line. Yet, the message light continued to blink, and the ringtone, muffled now, still emanated from the base unit. It felt profoundly wrong, like hearing a heartbeat from a severed limb. I pulled out my tablet and accessed the PBX interface. I navigated to the third-floor extensions. The extension for that specific desk, 3072, was indeed marked dark. But the system also displayed an active hold state on that line, initiated last Thursday at 16:33. This was impossible. A dark extension cannot initiate or hold a call. The system should have purged any active state. My mistake. I had relied on the automated nightly audit report, which showed all Apex extensions as dark instead of performing a manual spot check after their final departure. The automated report had clearly been incomplete or flawed. I attempted to clear the hold via the PBX interface. The system registered the command, but the hold status persisted. The ring from the physical phone stopped for a moment, then resumed. A soft, persistent thrum. I tried to unplug the phone. The cord was surprisingly tight in the wall jack. I had to use the pliers on my multi-tool to work it free. The ringing finally stopped. Silence returned, complete and absolute. I felt a small, mundane sense of accomplishment. I decided to check the patch panel in the copy nook. This is where all the network and phone lines for the floor terminate. The copy nook was dim. I flipped on the light. The faint, acrid smell of stale toner hung in the air. I used to like that. Now it just reminds me of endless paper jams. I located the patch panel. Extension 3072 was clearly labeled, but the port was dark, with no active link light. This directly contradicted the PBX software's hold status. My usual protocol would be to trace the line back to the main switch, but the contradiction was too stark. The PBX said it was on hold, but the physical patch panel showed no activity. The phone had rung, then stopped when unplugged. The system was failing to reconcile physical reality with its digital representation. The trace wouldn't explain the phantom hold, so I abandoned that step. The PBX system was displaying an impossible state. I wondered what else could be similarly misaligned. I decided to check the building's access control system. Every employee has a badge, and visitors receive temporary passes. All entries and exits are meticulously logged. The badge kiosk is in the lobby, a standard self-service unit. I logged in with my manager credentials. I pulled up the logs for Apex Solutions, specifically looking for anyone who might have been in the building after the official move-out deadline last Friday. The system showed no entries from Apex personnel since Friday at 1700. Then, on a hunch, I searched for any temporary passes issued to Apex employees. One entry stood out. A temporary pass issued last Thursday at 1625. The name associated with it was for an Apex employee who, according to our records, had returned their permanent badge and officially left the company in June. This temporary pass was logged as returned at 1645 that same Thursday. The timing was too close to the PBX's hold initiation time, 1633. Why would someone who left in June need a temporary pass last Thursday? And why was it returned so quickly? Our system typically flags attempts to issue temporary passes to former employees. This one hadn't been flagged. I tried to print a new temporary pass using the exact information from that Thursday entry. The kiosk whirred, the thermal printer clicked, and a blank white card emerged. No name, no photo, no barcode. Just a smooth, featureless piece of plastic. The kiosk screen displayed a stark message. Error. Record conflict. Data integrity compromised. I tried again. Same result. I checked the kiosk's internal log. It still showed a successful print and return for the pass last Thursday. But when I tried to re-verify the data, it produced the blank pass and the error message. The system was now actively contradicting its own past records, or perhaps actively resisting a recreation of the anomaly. It was as if the original entry had been valid for a brief window, then became invalid, but its ghost remained in the logs. I left the blank pass on the kiosk's tray. The building was quiet again, the only sound the low hum of the HVAC. I submitted a high-priority ticket to IT for both the PBX system and the badge kiosk, detailing the impossible hold and the blank pass issue. Later that day, IT reported that the PBX hold on extension 3072 had finally cleared itself. They couldn't explain why it had been stuck, or why a dark line could hold a call. The badge kiosk, after a full system reboot, now showed no record of any temporary pass being issued to that former employee last Thursday. The entry was simply gone. The desk on the third floor remains empty. Sometimes, when the building is particularly quiet, I think I hear a faint, distant ring. It's probably just the air handling, or a car alarm from the street below. but I still check the PBX logs for the third floor every morning, just in case. My shift as a garage attendant usually started quiet, settled into a predictable rhythm of monitoring screens and the occasional transaction. 15 years in the business, mostly overnight. You learn the hums and groans of a concrete structure. This facility, a 5-level underground parking garage beneath downtown, was no exception. Its concrete lungs breathed with the city above, exhaling the stale scent of exhaust and damp earth. My station, a reinforced glass booth at the B1 pay point, was command central. A bank of monitors displaying feeds from over 80 cameras, an intercom system, and the gate controls. My tools were my eyes, my ears, and the digital logbook. The night of the incident, a Tuesday, was particularly rough. A series of squalls had been blowing through since sunset, rattling the surface gates and making the ventilation system work overtime. Rain hammered the grates above, and the wind whistled through the lower levels, creating odd acoustic effects. It was just past 2:30 when the first anomaly registered. My primary protocol for the overnight is constant vigilance of the camera feeds, augmented by the acoustic sensors. These sensors, strategically placed throughout the garage, are designed to pick up abnormal sounds, breaking glass, car alarms, or human voices, and flag them for review. At 2:32, an alert flashed for B2, the lowest public parking level. The system flagged unusual rhythmic impact. I toggled the audio feed for B2. Through the hiss of static and the distant rumble of the city, I heard it. The distinct sound of running footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, echoing off the bare concrete walls. They sounded like someone sprinting. My eyes scanned the B2 camera grid, but the monitors showed only empty parking spaces, rows of silent vehicles, and the faint glow of emergency lights. Not a soul. This wasn't entirely unusual. The garage's acoustics, especially on B2 with its long curving ramp, often played tricks. Sound could bounce, creating phantom echoes, or wind could carry distant noises in unexpected ways. I'd logged similar false positives before, usually attributing them to acoustic shadows or the unique way sound waves interacted with the structure's geometry. I made a mental note to check the sensor's calibration later. The footsteps continued, however, defying explanation. They ran toward the B2 ramp, the sound intensifying, then abruptly faded, as if the source had reversed direction, running away from the ramp, only to intensify again, running toward it once more. This pattern repeated. Toward, away, toward. Each time the camera feeds remained stubbornly empty. The repetition, the precise change in direction without any visible subject, started to chip away at my initial complacency. It was too consistent for random echoes. My next step, per protocol for persistent unconfirmed alerts, was to activate the thermal overlay. The system switched, painting the monochrome camera feeds with heat signatures. And there they were, distinct, shimmering plumes of heat, moving across the concrete floor of B2. They were elongated, roughly human-shaped, and they moved with the exact rhythm and direction of the footsteps. Toward the ramp, away, then toward again. Yet beneath these heat signatures, The concrete remained visibly empty. No body, no clothing. Just the concrete floor and the moving heat. It was like watching a ghost run, but only its thermal imprint was visible. I tried to raise the roving security guard on duty, but my radio only crackled. Unit 2, this is attendant. Requesting visual check B2. Possible thermal anomaly. No response. The guard was likely on B5 or B6 doing a perimeter check, out of range in the deeper parts of the building. My supervisor, a stickler for procedure, would have insisted I wait. I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight and my personal walkie-talkie. Dispatch, attendant proceeding to B2 for physical verification. Thermal anomaly active. I didn't wait for a reply. Sometimes, you just had to see it for yourself. It was a minor deviation, a slight overconfidence in my ability to handle a simple check. The air in the stairwell was cold, carrying the faint metallic tang of ozone and the heavier smell of damp concrete. My boots echoed on the steel steps as I descended, the sound amplified by the enclosed space. As I reached the bottom of stairwell 1 and pushed through the heavy fire door onto B2, the footsteps ceased. The thermal plumes vanished from my handheld monitor, which mirrored the main system. The level was silent, save for the distant thrum of the ventilation. I swept my flashlight beam across the empty parking spaces, under parked cars, into the shadows of the support pillars. Nothing. Not a discarded wrapper. Not a fresh tire track. Certainly no person. The concrete was dry in most places, wet where the squall had forced water through a vent. I checked the temperature with my handheld thermal imager. Ambient. No residual heat. It was as if whatever had been there had simply dissolved. Frustrated, I returned to the pay station, logging the incident as unexplained thermal/acoustic event, negative physical contact. I spent the next 20 minutes reviewing the footage, slowing it down, frame by frame. The heat plumes were undeniably there, moving with purpose. Then they simply weren't. At 0317, a new alert flashed. Stair 3. This stairwell was further down the main thoroughfare of B1, less frequently used. The audio feed registered a sharp clack. I pulled up the camera for stair 3. The heavy steel fire door, which was usually kept slightly ajar by a wedge for ventilation, was swinging shut. It moved slowly, deliberately, then latched with the distinct clack I'd heard. What struck me immediately was the way it closed. The door opened into the garage from the stairwell. It was swinging from its hinged side, pushed from the inside of the stairwell out into the garage, then back in to latch. Wind could not have done that. Not with that weight, and certainly not against its natural inward swing. Someone would have had to be in the stairwell, pushing it open, then letting it close. But the stairwell cameras showed no one, and the thermal overlay was blank. Then the footsteps returned. Not on B2, but now, subtly, faintly, from the direction of stair 3. They sounded lighter, faster, almost skittering, and they were disorienting. My acoustic sensors, which were supposed to pinpoint origin, seemed to be fighting themselves. One moment, the sound registered as coming from the stairwell. The next, it seemed to echo from the wall opposite the stairwell, as if the sound waves were reversing their origin, playing tricks on the directional microphones. It was like trying to hear a whisper in a funhouse mirror. The away, then toward again, now applied to the source of the sound, not just its path. I remembered a summer job during college, working in an old empty warehouse. We'd play hide and seek sometimes, and the acoustics were so strange that a voice from one end could sound like it was right next to you, or from a completely different direction. But that was just playful confusion. This felt deliberate. The footsteps from stair 3 began to multiply, overlapping. The sound system, designed to filter out ambient noise and isolate specific audio events, started to glitch. It was picking up the rhythmic impacts from B2 again, simultaneously with the lighter sounds from stair 3. The monitors for B2 showed the thermal plumes reappearing, moving erratically. One plume seemed to split into two, then merge. They darted toward the B2 ramp, then away, then in a tight, impossible circle, before vanishing again. I tried to call my supervisor. Supervisor, attendant, I have multiple thermal and acoustic anomalies, unconfirmed. I think the system is acting up. My voice felt thin and strained. The radio was silent for a moment, then burst with static, cutting off my transmission. I tried again, but the connection was dead. The protocol for system failure was to call an external line, but my hands were shaking. The door on stair 3, which had latched shut, now began to rattle. Not violently, but a persistent, low vibration against its frame, as if something was pushing against it from the inside, steadily, relentlessly. On the B2 camera, the thermal plumes reappeared, not running but pooling near the ramp, shimmering, then stretching, elongating into impossible shapes before dissipating into the concrete. The cacophony of footsteps from the acoustic sensors intensified, a chorus of impossible rhythms from multiple shifting locations. My screens flickered, the images freezing on empty concrete before snapping back to life. I've been the night supervisor at the regional distribution hub for 14 years. My shift starts at 2200, ends at 600. Most of the work is automated now, but the docks still require a human eye, especially for specialized freight and unscheduled pickups. We handle everything from medical supplies to high-value electronics. The air in the loading bay always smells faintly of ozone from the forklifts and the faint, metallic tang of the ocean air from the nearby port. It's a quiet job, mostly. Cold, too. Even in late spring, the concrete floor radiates a chill that seeps through the thickest boot soles. My routine is etched into my bones. Check the inbound manifest against the physical arrivals. Secure the last outbound truck, then patrol the perimeter. We have motion sensors, pressure plates, and over 200 cameras, but nothing beats a walkthrough. Every entry and exit point is logged, every package scanned, every visitor badged. That last part is non-negotiable. It's the first thing they teach you in security training. Identity verification. No badge, no entry. No badge, no pickup. Simple. Around 0130, the silence of Dock Bay 7 was broken by the distinct rumble of an approaching vehicle. My handheld terminal showed no scheduled activity. I checked the main console. Nothing. I walked over to the bay door, peering through the reinforced glass. A dark-colored cargo van, nondescript, idled on the apron. Its headlights were off, engine barely audible. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, lean, dressed in a thick, unbranded jacket, dark pants, and a plain baseball cap pulled low. He wasn't wearing a high-vis vest, which was the first red flag. All couriers, even after hours, are required to wear company-issued safety gear. I activated the intercom. "Good evening. This is a restricted area. State your business." The man walked slowly towards the bay door's pedestrian entrance. He didn't look up at the dome camera directly above him. "Pickup. Overnight. For the CEO." His voice was flat, devoid of inflection. "Sir, I have no record of an unscheduled pickup for tonight. And you're not wearing proper identification or safety gear. Please state your company and show your badge." I kept my tone even, professional. This wasn't the first time someone tried to bypass protocol, usually a new driver, or one running late and hoping to slip through. He stopped just outside the pedestrian door, about 10 feet from the camera. The light from the bay interior cast long shadows, making his face hard to discern beneath the cap. "It's a special request." The CEO left a sealed box. "Urgent. Needs to go out tonight." He gestured vaguely towards the messenger cage, visible through the glass. My internal alarm bells were ringing louder now. "I understand, sir, but standard procedure requires a valid company ID and a pickup manifest. I also need you to look directly at the dome camera so I can log your entry." I pointed to the camera. He shifted his weight, a subtle movement, turning his body slightly away from the camera's optimal angle. His jacket, a plain charcoal gray, seemed to absorb the light. "Look, this is time-sensitive. The CEO made arrangements. I was told it would be ready. Sir, I cannot release any freight without proper identification and verification. This is a high-security facility. If the CEO made arrangements, there would be a digital manifest and a pre-authorized entry code. I have neither." I felt a prickle of irritation, but kept it out of my voice. Fatigue was starting to set in. I'd been up since 0600 with my kids' school play rehearsal, and the long night shift was already dragging. My mistake was assuming this was just another impatient courier. He took a step closer, pressing his face against the glass, but still angled away from the camera. His eyes were shadowed, unreadable. The box. It's small, sealed. "You just need to hand it over." "I need to see your badge, sir," I repeated, my patience wearing thin. This was a direct violation. My protocol was clear: no badge, no service. I was preparing to tell him to leave the premises and contact his dispatcher. Then the dock phone rang. It was the internal line, the one connected only to other departments within the building. I glanced at the console, a flicker of surprise. No one calls the dock direct from internal at this hour, unless it's an emergency. It was a distraction, a brief moment where my focus wavered from the courier. I instinctively reached for the handset, my eyes still on the man at the door. He used that split second. He didn't move fast, not really, but with a fluid, almost unnatural grace. He was suddenly at the pedestrian door, pushing it open before I could react. The security system chimed, a soft, insistent alert. "Hey, you can't just," I started, dropping the phone. It clattered against the console, the receiver still off the hook, emitting a low, continuous dial tone. He was inside, moving towards the messenger cage with purpose. The box. He didn't ask, he stated. My heart hammered. This was beyond a protocol violation. This was a security breach. I grabbed the emergency comms button on my belt. Security breach, Dock Bay 7. Unauthorized entry. He ignored me, his gaze fixed on the small, secured locker within the messenger cage. He pulled a small, metallic tool from his pocket. It wasn't a crowbar or a pick, just a simple, flat piece of metal. He inserted it into the lock of the designated CEO pickup locker. There was a soft click. Too soft, too easy. He opened the locker, reached in, and retrieved a small, unassuming cardboard box, sealed with tamper-evident tape. The box had the CEO's specific internal routing label. It was the correct box. "Wait!" I shouted, moving towards him, but he was already turning, the box tucked under his arm. He moved with a speed that belied his earlier slow approach. He was out the pedestrian door and into his van before the internal security team could even acknowledge my call. The van engine roared to life, and he was gone, tires spitting gravel on the apron. The security team arrived minutes later. The head of security, a former Marine, was livid. We reviewed the footage immediately. The dome camera above the pedestrian door provided a clear, if slightly angled view of the man. "Okay, frame by frame," the security chief ordered. We watched the playback. The van pulling up, the man exiting, his refusal to face the camera. The argument, the internal phone ringing, my momentary distraction. His entry. He moved like a shadow. My mistake, that lapse in focus when the phone rang, had cost us. Then we saw it. As he turned from the messenger cage with the box, his jacket was clearly visible. A small, embroidered logo, barely noticeable, was on the left chest. It was a stylized hawk, the emblem of a regional courier service we often used. "There," I said, pointing. "He's with Falcon Express. We can track him through them." Relief washed over me, a brief respite from the gnawing dread. This was solvable. The security chief rewound the footage, then played it forward again, slowly. "Hold it, right there." He paused the frame as the man was exiting the building, the box under his arm. The Hawk logo was clear. Then he toggled back 2 frames, to the moment the man was reaching into the locker. The jacket was the same, the angle similar. But the logo was different. It was a small, circular emblem, like a stylized gear, the symbol of a different courier service. Apex Logistics. "What the hell?" the chief muttered. He toggled back and forth, frame by frame. Hawk, gear. Hawk, gear. The logo on the jacket shifted, subtly, impossibly, between 2 distinct corporate emblems. We spent the rest of the night reviewing the footage, cross-referencing timestamps, checking for digital anomalies. There were none. The footage was pristine. The log photo of the incident, automatically captured by the system, showed the Hawk logo in one file, and then a subsequent file, just milliseconds later, showed the gear logo. We called both courier services. Neither had a driver matching the description, nor any record of a pickup request from our CEO for that night. The CEO himself confirmed he had not sent a courier. The box contained sensitive proprietary data. It was gone. The internal phone call? We traced it. It came from an unused extension in the old boiler room, a line that hadn't been active in years. No one was in the boiler room. No one could have been. I still work the night shift. Every time an unscheduled vehicle approaches the dock, I feel a cold knot in my stomach. I check the cameras, double-check the manifests, and I never, ever look away. The memory of that shifting logo, the impossible change, is burned into my mind. It wasn't a ghost, not a monster. It was just a man in a blank jacket. But what he did, what was done, defies every logical explanation I have. And the box? It was never recovered. I have been a glazing systems technician for 18 years, specializing in high-rise curtain wall maintenance. My territory covers the dense urban core, structures that push the limits of engineering and often challenge the very concept of a sealed environment. I hold certifications in rope access, fall protection, and thermal imaging. My kit is a mobile lab, handheld anemometers, precise pressure transducers, acoustic leak detectors, and a full range of sealant application tools. I know these buildings, the way they settle over decades, the way their materials expand and contract with the seasons. More importantly, I know the way they're supposed to breathe. The call came through at 0200 hours. A severe cold front had just swept across the region, dropping ambient temperatures by 20 degrees Fahrenheit in less than an hour. The building management technician on duty at the Metropolis Tower sounded strained, his voice tight with a mix of confusion and unease. "We're getting internal wind alarms," he reported. 60th floor sky lobby. Not fire, not security, just wind. It's like the whole floor is inhaling and exhaling. The doors, they're breathing. My standard response for interior wind alarms involves a systematic diagnostic sweep. First, verify external conditions against the building's integrated weather station. Then, a physical check of all operable components: entry doors, emergency exits, ventilation grills. Next, a thorough inspection of the glazing for any visible damage, sealant failure, or compromised panels. Finally, deploy portable pressure transducers and thermal cameras to pinpoint the exact source of any breach or pressure differential. The core protocol is always to identify the anomaly and mitigate it. These sealed envelopes rely on controlled internal pressure. Uncontrolled differentials mean structural stress, potential material fatigue, and in extreme cases, catastrophic failure. I arrived at 0245. The external anemometer on the roof access level registered a steady 10 knots, gusting intermittently to 12. Nothing out of the ordinary for a cold front. But stepping out of the elevator onto the 60th floor, the air was undeniably active. It wasn't a simple draft. It was a palpable, rhythmic push and pull. The heavy glass entry doors to the sky lobby, normally sealed tight against the elements, were indeed breathing. They'd pull inward with a soft, deep thump, then push out with a faint, drawn-out whoosh. The motion was subtle, barely perceptible, yet utterly constant. The building management technician had propped a standard cleaning broom against the polished wall for a quick photo, hoping to capture the unsettling phenomenon. As I watched, the broom slowly, almost imperceptibly, slid a few inches sideways, then resettled. On the brushed steel reception desk, a piece of paper, likely a forgotten work order, curled upwards at the edges, then flattened back down. repeating the motion with the same unnerving rhythm as the doors. This wasn't a draft, this was an internal atmospheric event. I deployed my handheld anemometer. Inside the glazing bay, it registered gusts of 20 to 25 knots. This was the first major contradiction. The internal wind speed was nearly double the external reading, with no obvious breach. My portable pressure transducers confirmed the building management technician's reports, logging rapid cyclical swings. From minus 50 pascals to plus 60 pascals, then back again, every 15 to 20 seconds. This perfectly mirrored the door's breathing. The air itself was shifting. I ran the thermal camera across the entire glazing bay. No cold air ingress, no hot air egress. The curtain wall appeared perfectly intact, the seals tight, the glass panels solid. There were no visible cracks, no hairline fractures. The building envelope seemed perfectly sealed. This was the second contradiction. High internal wind, significant pressure swings, but no breach. It was like a lung without an airway. My mind turned to stack effect, but not the typical manifestation. With the severe cold front, the extreme temperature differential between the building's warm interior and the frigid exterior would create a powerful buoyancy effect, drawing air up the building. But this building was designed to be a completely sealed system. The internal pressure was supposed to be meticulously controlled by the HVAC. I ascended to the roof. The air up there was crisp, clear, and bitingly cold. The city lights below shimmered under the stars. The main anemometer still read 10 knots. I checked the exhaust vents for the building's HVAC system. They were running, pulling air, but not at a rate that would account for the lobby's phenomenon. I noticed something else, a subtle detail. A faint, low hum, almost a vibration, seemed to emanate from the building's core. It wasn't mechanical. It felt resonant, like the entire structure was acting as a colossal, tightly tuned instrument. My usual protocol for pressure issues is to check HVAC controls, adjust dampers, or look for an open door or a service access panel left ajar. But everything was closed, sealed, and running as designed. The system was fighting something it couldn't control, an invisible opponent. I made a minor mistake then. I briefly opened a roof access hatch, just a crack, to feel the upward pull of the stack effect. The air rushed past my gloved hand with surprising force. A cold, dry current. I wanted to get a better, more tactile sense of the building's internal dynamics. I held it open for maybe 5 seconds too long, just a small crack, but enough. When I returned to the sky lobby, the rhythmic breathing motion of the doors was distinctly more pronounced. The pressure swings were now hitting minus 80 pascals to plus 90 pascals. The building management technician looked at me, his eyes wide. "It got worse," he stated, his voice barely a whisper. I knew it had. My brief, ill-advised intervention on the roof had exacerbated the internal dynamics. The building, a sealed chimney, had just been given a slightly larger draft, and it was responding. We stood there, watching the doors. The rhythmic thump, whoosh, was now accompanied by a faint, high-pitched whine from the glazing itself, a harmonic vibration resonating through the glass. The paper on the desk was no longer just curling. It was fluttering, almost dancing, towards the sealed pane, then away, caught in the invisible currents. The anemometer in the glazing bay now showed brief spikes over 30 knots, still with no corresponding change in the external wind. The internal alarms were a constant, insistent chime. I thought, for a moment, of a summer evening years ago, watching fireflies blink in the humid air of my backyard. A simple, quiet moment of natural rhythm. This was the opposite, a vast, complex machine breathing under an invisible, immense force. The impossible contradiction remained. A perfectly sealed building, no external wind anomaly, yet internal wind speeds and pressure swings that suggested a hurricane was brewing inside the structure. The stack effect, amplified by the extreme temperature differential, was creating its own localized weather system within the building's core. The glazing bay, a large open volume, was acting like a resonant chamber, amplifying the effect. The building wasn't just breathing, it was orchestral. I've been an IT contractor for 15 years, specializing in network infrastructure and legacy system decommissioning. My work often involves late-night shifts and on-call rotations, especially when dealing with critical system migrations or the final shutdown of old facilities. The region I cover is mostly corporate campuses and government buildings, structures that often have decades of layered technology and forgotten cable runs. My toolkit is standard. Fluke certifiers, cable toners, fiber optic test kits, and a laptop loaded with network analysis software. I trust the data, the logs, the physical connections. My job is to make sense of the digital and physical world, to ensure everything is accounted for, online or off. This particular campus was a sprawling complex of 5 buildings, one of which, Building C, had been fully vacated 6 months prior. Its network infrastructure was supposed to be completely dark. Power cut to all non-essential racks, fiber runs disconnected at the campus MDF, and all copper lines terminated at the patch panels. Our protocol is strict. For security and resource management, a decommissioned building's network must be a dead end. No active routes, no stray signals. It's a fundamental rule that ensures a clean break. The night started like any other. I was in Building A's server room, running routine diagnostics on a core switch. The hum of the cooling units a familiar drone. It was 1:29 when the first anomaly registered. The all-in-one printer in the adjacent copy room, a Canon Image Runner 4045i, suddenly whirred to life. Its LCD screen, normally dark, glowed blue. This model was configured for network printing, scanning, and faxing, but it hadn't received a fax in months. Most departments had migrated to email-based document transfer. I walked into the copy room. The printer was spitting out a single sheet of paper. The scent of warm toner hung in the air. I picked up the printout. It was a fax header. Stark black text on white. The date stamp was current. 1/17/2024, 1:31 a.m. The receiving number was the all-in-one's direct fax line. The sender's number, however, stopped me cold. It was an internal 5-digit extension, followed by the campus prefix, originating from Building C. The header clearly read, "From Building C, Accounting." My first thought was a misconfiguration, a ghost in the machine from a recent network migration. Perhaps a redirect from an old VoIP line that hadn't been properly scrubbed. I'd seen stranger things caused by human error during complex decommissioning projects. I considered it a nuisance, a minor oversight by the team that handled the Building C shutdown. I pulled up the all-in-one's internal logs. The entry was clear. Fax received, line 1, from Building C number. No error codes. The printer had processed it as a legitimate incoming transmission. Next, I checked the active Building A PBX logs. Our PBX is a robust system, logging every incoming and outgoing call. I filtered by the building C number, but the search returned nothing. No record of an incoming call from that specific external number at 131. The fax had printed, yet the PBX, the very system designed to route and log all telephony traffic, had no record of its arrival. This was the first real contradiction. The system said it happened, the network said it didn't. I switched to the network monitoring console, checking for any active routes or rogue devices originating from Building C. The console showed Building C as dark, just as it should be. No active IP addresses, no network traffic. The logical network was dead. Yet, a fax had arrived. This required a physical investigation. I grabbed my toolkit and headed to the main distribution frame, MDF, in Building A. The MDF is the nerve center for all communications cabling in a facility. I needed to trace the physical path. I located the patch panel for the copy room's fax line. It was correctly punched down to a port on an active VoIP gateway, which connected to the PBX. Nothing unusual there. But how did the signal bypass the PBX logs? I started tracing the line back. I used a toner, a handheld device that sends a signal down a cable, allowing me to identify its counterpart at the other end. The tone led me to an older, unused patch panel, one that hadn't been active in years. A single copper pair was punched down to it, labeled Fax Route C. It was a legacy line, part of an old T1 circuit that had been replaced almost a decade ago. This specific pair should have been physically disconnected at both ends during the decommissioning. Yet, the toner's light was blinking, indicating a live connection. This was the ghost route, a physical connection that had survived decommission. A protocol failure. The cable ran through the conduit system, heading directly towards Building C. I confirmed the route with the campus network schematics. The schematics showed this particular line as decommissioned, removed. The schematics were wrong. The air outside was cold, a damp chill that hinted at dawn. The campus was silent, save for the distant hum of the main power substation. Building C loomed, a dark, hulking structure against the pre-dawn sky. Its windows were black, reflecting nothing. I unlocked the main door, the heavy steel groaning on its hinges. The interior was colder than outside, the air stale and still. The building's power was mostly off, but emergency lighting provided a dim, greenish glow along the main corridors. The only sound was my own footsteps echoing on the polished concrete. I remembered a time, years ago, when these halls were bustling, the air filled with the scent of coffee and the murmur of conversations. It felt like a different world now. I made my way to Building C's MDF. It was almost completely dark, save for a few battery-powered emergency lights. Most of the racks were empty, their equipment removed. The legacy PBX/fax server, a clunky unit from the late 90s, was still there, sitting in a half-empty rack. It was powered down, its status lights dark. No hum, no fan noise. It was a dead box. But the ghost route terminated here. I found the patch panel, clearly labeled for the old accounting department's fax lines. The specific copper pair I'd traced from Building A was punched down. I connected my cable certifier. It registered a faint, intermittent signal. Not data, not voice, but something. A low-frequency pulse, irregular, almost like a heartbeat. It was coming from the port on the powered-down legacy PBX/fax server. I peered at the back of the server. No power cable. The unit was dead. Yet, the port where the ghost route connected showed a faint, flickering link light. It wasn't the bright, steady green of an active connection, but a weak, almost imperceptible blink, like a dying ember. The cable from this port snaked into a wall conduit, leading to the main cable chase that ran between Building C and Building A. I had installed a small, motion-activated camera in that chase during the initial decommissioning phase, a standard procedure to monitor for unauthorized access or rodent activity before sealing it off permanently. It was still recording. I accessed the camera's feed from my laptop. The chase was a narrow, dusty tunnel, crisscrossed with abandoned conduits and old fiber trays. The footage played back, mostly dark, punctuated by the occasional scuttling of a rat. I fast-forwarded to the early hours of the morning, around 1:30. At 1:31:07, a light appeared. It wasn't a flare, not a camera artifact. It was a distinct sweep, like a flashlight beam, moving slowly, deliberately, along the concrete floor of the chase, from the direction of Building C towards Building A. It was a focused beam, not diffuse ambient light. It moved, then paused, then moved again, covering a section of the chase about 10 feet long. The light itself was pale, almost bluish. There was no visible source for the light. No person, no object. Nothing entered the frame from either end of the chase. The light simply manifested, swept, and then faded, leaving the chase in darkness once more. I replayed the footage, frame by frame. The light was undeniably there. It was a precise, controlled sweep, but there was no physical presence. No dust motes illuminated around a hand. No shadow cast by a body. Nothing. Just the light. The fax header lay in my pocket, crisp and real. The PBX logs remained blank. The ghost route in the MDF still pulsed with that faint, irregular signal, even with the server powered off. I stood there, in the cold, dark MDF of Building C, the camera footage looping on my screen. I pulled out my cable cutters. With a firm squeeze, I severed the copper pair leading to the ghost route. The faint pulse on the certifier died. The flickering link light on the dead server went dark. The activity stopped. The ghost route was finally, truly, dead. But the image of that light, sweeping through an empty. Over a decade as a cleaner lead in industrial facilities teaches you a lot about buildings. Not just the surfaces, but the systems underneath. The hum of HVAC, the subtle vibrations of pumps, the way a specific corridor always smells faintly of ozone or stale coffee. My current assignment is a secure research and data facility, a concrete and steel monolith that prioritizes environmental stability above all else. Every cubic foot is monitored. Every system has redundancy. Every anomaly triggers an alarm. That's the rule. It's the bedrock of our safety protocols, especially on the night shift when the building mostly sleeps. My shift starts at 2300. I check my cart, confirm the floor plan for the night, and review the incident log from the previous shift. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual scuffs, dust accumulation, and routine waste disposal. I grab my handheld thermal imager and my two-way radio. The facility is quiet, the air conditioned to a precise 21 degrees Celsius, filtered and recycled. It's a sterile environment, meticulously maintained. My route takes me through the core corridor of Level 3, a long, brightly lit artery connecting several critical mechanical rooms. These rooms house the heavy-duty chillers, air handlers, and redundant power systems that keep the entire operation running. Each mech room door is a heavy, insulated slab of steel, sealed tight, with its own local status panel mounted beside it. This panel is crucial. It displays the room's internal temperature, humidity, and pressure differentials. More importantly, it shows normal in green text, unless there's a deviation that triggers a facility-wide alert. No deviation means no problem. Simple. Around 0145, I was making my second sweep of Level 3, polishing the high-gloss epoxy floor. The corridor was silent, save for the distant rhythmic thrum of the main server farm. As I approached Mech Room 3B, a low white fog, like a concentrated exhalation, seeped from under the sealed door. It was thickest at floor level, clinging to the polished surface, spreading perhaps a meter into the corridor before beginning to dissipate upwards. It beaded on the corridor paint, forming tiny, clear droplets that caught the fluorescent light. The air here felt distinctly colder, and there was a faint metallic tang, like old copper or fresh blood. My first thought was a faulty humidifier, maybe a minor steam leak. I'd seen small steam leaks before in older sections of the building, usually accompanied by a pressure drop or temperature spike on the local panel, and almost always an audible hiss. But this time, there was nothing. No hiss. No visible source. And the status panel beside the door, directly above the creeping fog, read normal in an unwavering green light. No indicator lights were flashing. No audible alerts were sounding. My brain processed the contradiction instantly. A visible, palpable anomaly. Yet the system reported perfect stability. This was the first professional protocol failure I encountered. I stopped, my cleaning cart parked a few meters away. I pulled out my thermal imager. Pointing it at the fog, the display showed a consistent, cool blue, indicating a temperature several degrees below the ambient corridor air. I scanned the door itself. The bottom edge, where the fog emerged, was also faintly blue. But the rest of the door and the surrounding wall were a uniform green, indicating normal temperature. I checked the main corridor air intake sensor, located about 10 meters down the hall. Its digital display read 21.0 degrees Celsius and 45% humidity. Perfectly stable. "Lead to supervisor," I radioed, keeping my voice level. "I have an unexplained vapor release from Mech Room 3B. Visual confirmation of fog. Local status panel reads normal. Requesting immediate response. Hold position. I'm en route with the master key and a tech." The wait felt longer than the 5 minutes it took for them to arrive. The fog continued its slow, silent creep, the droplets on the floor catching the light. I watched it, trying to discern a pattern, a source, anything. The metallic taste in the air seemed to intensify the longer I stood there. The supervisor arrived first, followed closely by a facilities technician. The tech carried a more advanced handheld thermal camera and a multi-gas detector. As the supervisor rounded the corner from the stairwell, I noticed a subtle shift in the air. The outside air, which sometimes permeated the stairwells from the roof vents, had tasted like old coins, sharp and metallic. I'd noticed it earlier in my shift, dismissed it as residual from the building's older sections, a vivid but ultimately irrelevant sensory detail. Now it was just the metallic tang of the fog. They both observed the fog, confirmed the normal reading on the panel. The supervisor's brow furrowed. "That's not right," they murmured, more to themselves than to me. The tech immediately got to work, scanning the door and the surrounding wall with their thermal camera. "Okay, this is interesting," the tech said, zooming in on the display. "The wall itself is cool, but I'm seeing clear, hot bands radiating through the concrete. Specific lines, almost like pipes or conduits, running vertically and horizontally behind the wall. Significant heat signatures, yet the external surface is cool." This was the hot bands on a cold wall the prompt described, a profound contradiction. The multi-gas detector, meanwhile, showed no dangerous levels of common industrial gases. No CO, no methane, no refrigerants. Just elevated humidity, consistent with the visible fog. "We need to see what's inside," the supervisor stated, making the call. "Tech, stand by with the detector. Lead, be ready to secure the area if needed." The supervisor inserted the master key into the heavy door. There was a click, a faint pneumatic sigh as the seal broke. As the door cracked open, the fog thinned immediately, drawn into the corridor by the pressure differential and the building's powerful HVAC system. It dissipated rapidly, becoming wisps, then vanishing almost entirely within seconds. We stepped inside. The room was vast, filled with an array of pumps, pipes, and control panels, all humming with a low, steady thrum. The air inside was humid, but the dense fog was mostly gone, just a faint haze lingering near the ceiling. We moved quickly to the main control panel inside the room. All gauges read within normal operating parameters. No pressure drops, no temperature spikes, no flow anomalies. Nothing to indicate a steam release, a burst pipe, or any other system malfunction that could account for the volume of vapor we had just witnessed. It was as if the fog had never been there, yet the droplets still beaded on the corridor paint outside. The tech rescanned the interior. The visible pipes and equipment appeared to be operating at expected temperatures. The hot bands on the exterior wall, which had been so clear on the thermal imager just moments before, now had no corresponding internal heat source that could be identified. The supervisor ordered a full system diagnostic, a comprehensive scan of every sensor and valve. It took nearly an hour. Nothing was found. No leaks, no pressure drops, no temperature excursions. The system reported perfect operational integrity. The incident was logged as environmental anomaly, unexplained vapor. That night, the fog never recurred from that door. The facility continued its operations, oblivious. I remember a childhood fog rolling in over the fields near my grandparents' farm, thick and disorienting, but always natural, always explainable by weather patterns. This was different. This fog felt manufactured, yet had no source. The system protocol failed. The alarms didn't trip. The gauges didn't move. The thermal anomaly was external, inexplicable. The event was documented but never understood. It just happened. And even now, when I walk that core corridor on level 3, it always feels a little colder, a little too quiet around Mech Room 3B. For 15 years, my professional life has revolved around systems. As a property manager for a sprawling research complex, I oversee everything from HVAC schedules to biometric access points. My domain is data, logs, timestamps, sensor readouts. I trust the Building Automation System, or BAS, implicitly. It's the digital nervous system of the entire campus, a meticulously engineered network designed to eliminate human error and provide an unassailable record of events. My office on the 3rd floor of the main administration building is a quiet hub of monitors, displaying real-time data streams, each one a thread in the complex tapestry of operations. One of the most critical routines, especially at our facility with its array of sensitive equipment and astronomical domes, is the nightly rooftop perimeter check. Every evening, a security officer is assigned this task. It's a physical patrol requiring navigation of catwalks, visual inspection of cooling units, and a sweep of the dome access points. To ensure accountability, the officer carries a patrol phone equipped with GPS tracking and NFC tag readers. There are 6 specific checkpoints along the route, each requiring a scan. The BAS is programmed to mark this task completed only after all tags are scanned and the GPS data confirms the full loop has been traversed. The patrol is always scheduled for midnight, a 30-minute window that concludes just as the city below settles into its deepest slumber. It was a Tuesday morning, just after 7 a.m. I was at my desk, the aroma of stale coffee lingering from my early start, reviewing the overnight security reports. The BAS dashboard displayed its usual green indicators, a reassuring sign of a quiet night. I scrolled down past the boiler pressure readings and the server room temperature logs to the security section. My eyes snagged on the rooftop perimeter check. Status: completed. Time: 23:58. My first thought was a system glitch. The patrol was scheduled for 0000, midnight. How could it be completed 2 minutes before it even started? I knew the guard on duty, a meticulous, by-the-book professional. They wouldn't pre-scan or skip steps. I leaned closer to the monitor, a faint, almost imperceptible hum from the server rack behind my wall panel filling the silence of the office. I pulled up the detailed task log. The BAS confirmed the 23:58 completion time, indicating all 6 NFC tags had been registered. This was impossible. The guard typically wouldn't even leave the ground floor security desk until precisely midnight to begin their rounds. I remembered a time, years ago, when a new guard had tried to scan a few tags early to save time, and the system had flagged it immediately, denying completion until the correct chronological order was observed. The BAS was designed to prevent such shortcuts. I accessed the patrol phone's GPS history for the previous night. The map rendered a clear, precise path. A perfect loop around the rooftop perimeter, tracing the catwalks between the main observatory dome and the smaller research domes. The timestamps on the GPS track began at 0011 and concluded at 0027. This data perfectly aligned with the standard operating procedure for a midnight patrol. The guard had indeed performed the patrol, exactly when they were supposed to. Now I had a contradiction. The BAS, the infallible record keeper, stated completion at 23:58. The GPS, another objective data source, showed the patrol occurring from 0011 to 0027. Both couldn't be right. I called the security supervisor. "Can you have the overnight guard from last night call me when they wake up?" I asked, keeping my tone level. Just a quick question about their rooftop check. Later that afternoon, the guard called. "Everything was normal, manager," they reported. "Clear sky, cold but no wind. Did the full loop. Scanned all the points. The usual." They recounted the chill of the midnight air, the way their breath plumed under the floodlights, the distant hum of the city barely audible over the rooftop HVAC units. Their account was consistent with the GPS data. I thanked them, trying to sound casual, but the knot in my stomach tightened. I decided to dig deeper. I accessed the building's main access control system. Every entry and exit through secured doors, including the rooftop hatch, is logged with a timestamp and the credential used. I filtered the logs for the rooftop hatch, focusing on the period around midnight. What I saw made me pause. For the date of the patrol, there were two distinct sets of entries for the rooftop hatch. The first set, credential ID, guard's ID, entry 0011, exit 0025. This was the guard. This matched the GPS. But directly below it, for the exact same calendar date, was a second identical set of entries. Credential ID, unknown system user, entry 0011, exit 0025. Two midnights, two identical access events for the same hatch, on the same calendar date, at the exact same minute. One attributed to a known user, the other to an entity the system couldn't identify, yet labeled system user. It was as if the system had recorded the same event twice, but one of those events had occurred in a parallel, unlogged dimension. My protocol for unexplained access events is immediate escalation to IT security. But this wasn't an unauthorized entry. It was a ghost entry, a duplicate, and it was tied to the impossible BAS completion time. I moved to the camera system. The rooftop perimeter is monitored by several high-definition cameras. I pulled up the feed from camera 3, which covers the main dome access and the catwalk leading to the smaller domes. I queued the footage to 23:58. Nothing. The rooftop was empty, bathed in the steady glow of the perimeter lights. The camera's internal timestamp displayed 23:58:30. The stars above the domes were sharp points of light against the black, moving imperceptibly as the Earth turned. Then I queued the footage to 0001. There was the guard, emerging from the hatch, beginning their patrol. I watched them move, a familiar figure against the backdrop of the night sky. As they walked between the two main domes, I noticed something. The stars. They weren't just moving imperceptibly. Between the two domes, in the narrow sliver of sky visible, the stars appeared to be sliding in subtly opposite directions, or perhaps skipping, as if the celestial sphere itself was stuttering. It was fleeting, a visual glitch I almost dismissed as lens flare or compression artifact. But it happened again, just as the guard passed the third checkpoint. The stars seemed to smear, then resolve, but in a slightly different configuration. It was like watching a film strip where two adjacent frames were from slightly different, yet simultaneous realities. I replayed the segment multiple times, frame by frame. The guard's movements were smooth, consistent. The camera's timestamp advanced normally. But the background, the vast, unchanging cosmos, seemed to buckle, to shift in a way that defied all astronomical expectation. I once spent a summer as a teenager working at a small observatory, polishing lenses, and I learned to recognize constellations. The patterns I saw in that brief footage were almost familiar, but subtly wrong, like a reflection in rippled water. The BAS still insisted the patrol was completed at 23:58. The guard's GPS and testimony confirmed a 0001 start. The access logs showed two identical entries for 0001. And the camera, our ultimate objective witness, showed the guard at 0001, but with a sky that defied physics. My systems, the very foundation of my professional trust, had presented an irreconcilable paradox. I tried to manually correct the BAS entry, to force the completion time to align with the GPS and access logs. The system rejected it. Task already completed, it flashed. Completion date time cannot be overwritten by earlier event. The 23:58 entry remained, immutable, alongside the later, correct data. I compiled a report, detailing every discrepancy, every impossible timestamp. It was marked Unexplained System Anomaly. There was no logical explanation, no malware, no hardware fault identified by the IT team. The data was simply contradictory. A digital ghost in the machine. I still review the overnight logs every morning, and every so often, I find myself staring at the rooftop camera feed, half expecting to see the stars stutter again. The systems are supposed to be objective, to provide certainty. But that night, they presented a reality where an event could be simultaneously completed and yet to begin, and where the universe itself briefly forgot its own rules. The memory of that impossible data, that silent cosmic slip, remains. A permanent, unsettling stain on the perfectly ordered world I manage.